Welcome to your daily dose of dopamine. My name is Robert. I'm here with my good friend Bradley McDaniels. How are you, Brad?
Hey, Robert, great to see you. I'm doing great, my friend.
So, for people who don't know, one of the cool things here in the connection is Brad and I have gotten to know each other, both, having gone through our PhD journeys. Brad is, as you see, with North Texas State. Is it North Texas State?
North Texas.
Just North Texas. Thank you.
Used to be North Texas State, kind of like Memphis State. There was that change.
There you go. So, at North Texas. And we both work in the Parkinson's field. We both have parents who have Parkinson's. It's the driving force behind both of our research and our places in life. So, for all those reasons, we're really well met. And first off, I just want to say thanks for being here. And man, it's good to be your friend.
Always a pleasure, Robert. Getting to have these conversations about the challenges that people with Parkinson's disease face, and really some of the mental health, non-motor things that really are the drivers of quality of life. I'm always game to talk about.
So you and I are very much on the same page, and I feel like the medical industry is just starting to open up, largely due to work by you and Indu and Greg and others that are saying this is not just a motor disease. Tell me about your pathway, because your background is it psychiatry, psychology?
Formerly, I'm at rehabilitation counseling
Okay,
was my PhD. So I
got it.
spent a lot of time, learning about the mental health components of chronic illness and disease.
So talk to me about the wrestling match, because that's what it feels like to me, and you call it whatever you want, but of trying to get people who have really solidly, foundationally called this a motor disease to open up to say, it's not just that.
Yeah, I think over the years we've seen the literature continuously become more robust on the non-motor features. And really, I think it's fair that you could conceptualize this as a neuropsychiatric condition, quite frankly. What the literature is clear about is, depression is responsible for two times more of the problems in Parkinson's disease than the motor symptoms are, which is interesting, right? And it clearly is still a motor disorder. It's a dysfunction of dopamine in the brainstem, causes these movement features. And I think that's what Parkinson originally saw.
Right?
And as we've seen it over the years, it's morphed into this other thing. Maybe not even morphed. I think the clinicians have just become more acutely aware of these other symptoms, if you will, and how problematic they are. And we're finally, I think, to a place, again, in talking with Indu Subramanian and Greg Pontone, who both are clinicians working in this space, they see it all the time in their clinics and talking about anxiety, depression, demoralization, apathy, right? These things that are, and the conversations I have with people who have Parkinson's. And I think I share with you, Robert, I've yet to ask a person with Parkinson's disease, what's your biggest challenge? And had them say my tremor,
Right.
right? It's always the other things. Maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's incontinence, but it's these other, maybe it's autonomic or, mental health, psychiatric conditions. But there are a variety of things with Parkinson's disease that cause struggles.
So if people are saying that, and I get the same thing, I constantly put that out there and try to give people a range, say, what percentage? And it ranges 60, 70, 80% of the struggle is what I hear the numbers, frankly, and
Yeah.
this is just self-reported, but people feel about the reality versus the face of it and the broad, especially from the people who don't experience Parkinson's in their regular life, of the tremor, right? If this is the hallmark, what we think it is, and yet the reality is that, what's the danger for, let's just start with the people with Parkinson's, if they're seen as this and they're feeling that?
Yeah. So it's how are they going to function in their lives, right? One of the things I think that happens and kind of what brought you and I together today was this idea of demoralization, right? That you get this diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, which is life-changing. There's no other way to put it. It's a traumatic event that happens in someone's life, and all of a sudden everything changes. And a doctor can give you a pill that helps with the slowness and can attenuate some of the motor features of Parkinson's. But it's these thoughts that we have of hopeless, helpless. I don't know what to do. and then which can trigger depression. So now we have another condition on top of that, which can all be interrelated with apathy, which means I'm not going to engage in life. I'm not going to follow treatment recommendations potentially. I don't feel like leaving my house to go exercise, which is really the only disease modifying therapy that we've even gotten close to at this point, right? And so I think it's thinking about the mental health component and how that's going to affect whether or not I am going to actively pursue treatment for my Parkinson's disease, meaning the things that my doctor recommends that I do.
So let's drill down into the word
Yeah.
you said that you know has really affected me deeply, and you've done specific work on it, which is demoralization. What is demoralization? How does it manifest in Parkinson's?
Yeah, great question. And this stems from Greg and Indu and I had done some writing a couple of years ago, and I was just having a conversation with Greg one day, and he said, are you familiar with demoralization? And I was, but I didn't really understand how deep this construct went. And he said, Brad, it's all over the cancer literature. People who have end-stage cancer disease, they're in palliative care. They are questioning, beginning to consider their mortality at this point, right? And there's not a lot of hope. They become helpless. And so I began reading some of the stuff that Greg sent to me. And he's like, we need to write about this in Parkinson's disease. And so as we read, what we found was that demoralization is classified, the hallmark definition is subjective incompetence. And I'm not a huge fan of that term because it sounds very pejorative to me, right?
Yeah,
You're going to tell someone that your problem is you're subjectively incompetent. And
great.
and Jerome Frank, who coined the term demoralization back in the 60s, talked about this. And what that means practically is I have an inability to cope with the pressing problems that I'm facing. So that's where the incompetence comes in. And really the other defining features are a sense of hopelessness. There's no hope for my life moving forward, right? And I can see how that could, particularly at the time of diagnosis, be the mindset. So often, and you and I have had these conversations, one gets diagnosed and they don't even know what Parkinson's disease is at the moment of diagnosis. You have Parkinson's disease. Maybe like me, 15 years ago, I knew Muhammad Ali and I knew Michael J. Fox, right? Those are the standard names. And that was really all I knew about Parkinson's disease. And when you saw how Michael J. Fox currently is with some of his struggles, and then you saw how Muhammad Ali was at the end of his life, you begin to think, is that what mine's going to be? And that's how my life's going to go. So that's the hopelessness piece. The
Right.
other component is helplessness. There's nothing I can do to change this, which not truly a fair statement, right? There's nothing I can do to change my diagnosis. There's nothing I can do to cure it. Right now, like I said, other than exercise, there's nothing I can do to modify the trajectory of this disease. So, what do I have left? Well, you and I know there are things that we can do, or that people with Parkinson's can do. Exercise is the one thing that we know that can change the trajectory of this disease. And so you get to that helplessness thing. So we've got hopeless, helpless. The other big one is a loss of meaning in life. An
Mm.
area that I've been interested in since my PhD work, since I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yep.
And anybody who listens to this, if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it.
Two
Um,
times. I'm with you.
yeah, and you learned from Frankl the role that meaning in life and purpose plays in outcomes. And we've seen the literature on meaning in life now has in the last decade, 15 years, it has blown up. And what we know is people who have more meaning in life have better outcomes in almost any variable we want to measure, up to and including mortality,
Yeah.
right? And so that's you lose meaning because part of it is you've had your assumptive world changes is what they call it.
Okay.
This idea of how my life is supposed to go,
Yeah.
the planned life that I have. I'm going to retire and I'm going to buy a beach house. I'm going to go live in Europe for a few years, whatever it may be. And now that's changed. And, even the other area that is interesting is the young onset population, right? Because what the literature shows is they have more struggles with demoralization, partly because they are still in the middle of their work lives.
Yeah.
And we know there were a few things that directly affect my identity and my meaning. And work is one of those things. It's the first question that we ask anybody we meet. What do
What
you
do you
do?
do?
And all of a sudden, maybe you can't do what you used to do.
Right.
You were the primary breadwinner at home, and now you can't be that person. You were the one who took care of everything in the home, and maybe now you can't do that. And so I begin to question, who am I? My identity is different than what I thought it was. And you really, I think, get to a point where you have to try to reinvent who you are despite this new challenge that you're facing. So all of that is demoralization. And it's a it's an interesting, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome.
Hmm.
So it's interesting in that it's a collection of symptoms, really. And
You mean Parkinson's?
demoralization.
Demoralization. Okay. Because I've
Yep.
heard that argument on that side. People say, it's not a disease syndrome. Anyway,
Yep.
okay. I didn't know where you're going. But so
Sorry.
demoralization is a syndrome, is what?
Correct. Yeah, it's
Okay.
not
Go
like
ahead, please.
depression, DSM-5
Got it.
diagnosis.
Thank you.
But it's a problematic thing in anybody with chronic illness, and I think we're just scratching the surface in Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
I think there are maybe 6 studies now that have tried to quantify, or I shouldn't say tried, they have quantified demoralization in Parkinson's. The numbers are right around 20%, which I think is low. When you look at depression, half the people with Parkinson's disease have depression. I would surmise that at least that number are experiencing demoralization, and likely the numbers that may not have been teased apart from depression in the studies. So we were kind of lumping it all together as
Well, and here's the other thing: is it's longitudinal as well. And how long? Forgive me. How long has your mom been diagnosed?
15 years now.
15, right? And my dad 24 years. Yeah, 25 this year. So and this is the chronic versus the acute thing all the time, right? People talk about, in particular, cancers, and it's not great, better or worse to have cancer or this, that. I'm not trying to say that, just saying that there's particular treatments and outcomes and things that point people in a certain direction in many cancers, not in all. My mom's a breast cancer survivor, thank God. When you have this slow burning in many people, chronic illness that, you hear about, and like you said, you project it immediately. Oh my God, am I there? And then all of a sudden you go, oh, maybe it's not that bad. And so I swing the other way into where I'm doing nothing or denying or whatever else tends to be. And then, it's not a one-time acceptance of, okay, fine, I have this thing. I have this thing, and what is needing to change because of that? What new symptom is popping up today, or in what way is it affecting something I never thought it would? Again, especially, this is so important, if you only thought of it as a physical thing. It's so much harder to define what's going on inside of us emotionally, and then to ask the reasonable question: is this part of Parkinson's? Or is it something else? Because this is what I always say. It's not like you get Parkinson's and your body goes, great, you're not going to get anything else because you get Parkinson's. You're still a human being.
Yeah.
And everything else you were subject to, you're subject to that too. So the confounding nature of this disease, and to not allow in the strongest terms possible, the psychosocial emotional side of it, the demoralization side of it, and all the many places that leads one to, it's astounding to me that we're not trumpeting this. I feel like that the band is queuing up. We're getting a few more, but man, it should be front and center. Everyone should be screaming this from the top of their lungs, so that services can be provided, because much like exercise can do well for the motor disorder, there are things that help with the psychosocial emotional side, but we need acceptance, and then we need funding and support for those things to be available for people to access them.
Yeah, and I think we're getting there, Robert. We just had some guidelines come out in MDS end of last year from a working group that I was a part of, where we looked at wellness
Mm.
and what are the components we need to consider. And a good chunk of that were the things that we're talking about. And so there are many, I'll just say, out there who are treating people with Parkinson's who believe this, not believe it, who have a focus on these non-motor features and understand the significance. But as always, we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better, and I think that's really where Indu and Greg have been so instrumental because again, I don't see patients now.
Right.
And they are, and they're the ones who are hearing these things. And then we have conversations and we say, hey, we need to bring this to the forefront so that Indu calls it name it to tame it, right? You've got to be able to name something before we can do something about it. Um,
This is where you're doing something that to me is really dynamic, because you and Indu and Greg and others, what, because you're addressing it from the medical perspective, by getting papers written that are seen and validated and given weight. I mean, I know what that's like going through the PhD program. I mean, what is the impact factor, and why this thing matters or doesn't matter, and all the various ways, what journals it published in.
the game
But
we play.
it's such a game. And in the meantime, real people are suffering and needing
Yeah.
things. So, the call on the one side, which I really appreciate, which is for, and this is squarely where I work, get the people to raise their voice. Don't wait for somebody to tell you. You feel it, say it, let's name it to tame it, and demand it then next too, right? The next thing comes, I don't know. I mean, like you said, I know this is slightly out of your realm too, but it does land in Greg and Indu's slot, and I'll be working more with Indu coming up, which I'm looking forward to, which is how to train or change the medical training institution to make this part of the curriculum, right? Because for many med students, it's just not. This has been known for decades, not just with Parkinson's, but other people call it bedside manner, or whatever you want to call it. But this specific side, to not only allow in and validate, but give practical tools to these wonderful, talented, hardworking doctors, and say, it's not enough to only know the ER side of the world, right? Life is, if we all were medical, I mean, I love The Pit. I think it's a fantastic show. But if that's all of medicine, we're screwed.
Gotcha.
If it's only extreme and extreme nothing, we've missed human life in the middle.
That's
We
right.
need to be able to support living non, emergency life, these
It's
slow
not
burn
binary.
things. Yeah, not exactly, not binary. That's
Yeah.
a good way to put it.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, and again, we've had these discussions, and I obviously would defer to both of them to speak more to the training of medical providers.
Right.
What I understand is that, half the people who are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease are not seen by a movement disorder specialist, right? And so when we look at the training that a general neurologist receives on Parkinson's disease, it's very limited.
Wow.
And that's troubling to understand a disease that's as complex as Parkinson's. That, again, maybe they're receiving treatment on the movement disorders, but Indu has talked about this a lot. She and I have had a lot of discussions about that and trying to figure out what can be done. And like I said, I probably won't venture a guess on that because it's not what I do. Let smarter people make that decision on how we should adjust. But yeah, I think some things can be different. Really what I kind of lean on a fair amount is my anecdata, right? That's what I call my anecdotal stories about my
Sure.
mom and other people I meet are the challenges that are faced in clinic.
Yeah.
And doctors' hands are tied a lot because of payment, right?
Yeah.
Reimbursement is difficult. You get 15 minutes per per follow-up visit, and it's really challenging to address the issues related to Parkinson's disease in 15 minutes. And, so one of the things that when I do patient focused talks around the DFW area, we talk about that, about coming into clinic with a list of things that need to be addressed and
Yep.
have them ranked.
Yeah.
What are those things? So that you make sure that you get them addressed um, while you're there.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It really is.
Oh.
And I don't know what the solution is, quite frankly.
No, I appreciate what you're saying. It really puts a lot of burden on the person with Parkinson's and their caregiver, right? To come, with almost their armor on, ready for a fight, ready to demand what they need. And the one thing that pops up to me, and I've heard it, and I've heard people talk about it, but is the importance of building the Parkinson's team, because you're right, it's too much burden to put on a doctor to be all these
Right.
things to one person too. And it's certainly too much to put on the person with Parkinson's and their family to demand those things. One of the favorite roles or jobs I hear, but maybe is underutilized in the Parkinson's world, is that of the social worker. It
Mm.
feels to me like the social worker, as well as psychologists, need to be elevated. Social workers have that really interesting in between spot, right? Where they're able to kind of place some of the missing things. And I've experienced that with my son, who was born with health challenges. And I mean, my wife and I, my son was given a 50-50 chance to live when he was born. He had diaphragmatic hernia. His guts had escaped up into, crushed one of his lungs and pushed his heart out of the way. Our first kid, we were in blackout mode. We didn't know what was going on. But in comes a social worker to say, sign this, let me help you with that, and helped us navigate the medical system that could have otherwise cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, not to mention took that off of us, right?
Right.
A social worker, that's one example of what they can do. In terms of navigating the psychosocial sides of things, that's where a social worker can pick up. If a doctor could red flag, just go, this is out of my realm. However, I see this is beyond a pill, this is beyond a surgery. I need to hand this off. That to me sounds like the type of integrated medicine that could really, and a social worker can, boom, point you to a support group, point you to an exercise class, whatever type of thing. Does that
Yeah.
model make sense?
It makes total sense. I
Yeah.
think the problem that we're up against is the payer model,
Mm,
right? When my mom was diagnosed, I was at the University of Kentucky and she was there, and the movement disorder doc who diagnosed her, as soon as my mom left his office, she went directly into another office of a gal who was actually I think she was a social worker. She might have been a nurse, but she had Parkinson's herself.
wow.
And they had hired her just for this role to
Wow.
say, I know this has been tough for you, what you just heard.
Yeah.
What questions do you have? And one of the challenges that my mom had at the time, that many have, is there are so many resources. Where do I go? What's valuable? What's a good resource? Right? You
Mm-hmm.
type in Parkinson's disease in Google and you watch what happens.
Yeah.
And most people can't look at those things and discern what I should trust and what I shouldn't.
Right.
And she told my mom, she said, I've got many things for you. Let's just start with a few.
Yeah.
And here you go. Here's a book that just tells you about what Parkinson's disease is in language that you can understand. And then you have questions. And the next time you come back, she gave my mom an email. They could communicate. I think it's a great model. That's the only place that my mom has been. She's been at she had four different providers. It's the only one that's had that mid-level person in between.
It's amazing.
And I've talked to other providers here in DFW and they love the idea, but it's like, how do we pay for it?
Yep. So,
Um,
so yeah, again, I guess who needs to raise hell where in order to make the decision makers understand, guess what, that bucket needs to be filled, or you need to have a bucket that needs to be filled, right? I mean,
yeah, it's an insurance issue, right?
yeah,
You've got to have the insurance providers understand that as part of a holistic treatment approach,
right.
if you want the best outcomes for this patient, which saves you money in the
That's
long
it.
run, we need to begin doing some of these other things. And I think It's a wonderful idea. I think things are done pretty well in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
Bass has got great systems over there. I think down at Fixell Institute in Florida with Mike Oken and Greg and that
Yep.
group, they've got a lot of interdisciplinary care right there. Um, I don't think everybody has got that kind of a system in place, which
Yeah.
is difficult. And I think the other thing that Indu talks about all the time is she says, Brad, I need some things that I can do in clinic in that time frame I have to help my patients. And she'll ask me, what are three things that I can tell my patient to help them find meaning in life if I find that they're struggling? That I
Yeah.
can tell them and it takes me 30 seconds.
Yep.
Something that'll help my patients dramatically is start a gratitude list.
Yep.
Super easy and anybody can do it. There's not really any training that you have to give them
Right.
because, her struggle has been I can tell people to go get CBT or
Sure.
meaning-based therapy, but it's another appointment, it's another payment.
Yeah.
It's for people who might struggle to get to physical therapy, occupational therapy, my movement disorder doc, my primary care doc for my other needs.
Yeah.
Now you want me to go see someone else
Mm-hmm.
for my Parkinson's. And so it's how do we navigate this system that we have? We have everything that we need in the system. It's how do we bring it together to help get rid of some of this hopelessness and helplessness and struggles that people are facing,
Yeah.
not only at diagnosis, right? It's as the disease progresses,
That's right.
it's never going to go away.
That's the truth that we know about it. And there's something within all of what you just said. There's sometimes it's not about, the knowledge is great. There's that side of it, but as it grows and as it, lengthens, because especially folks who are diagnosed relatively early or even in their 50s and 60s, you're going to probably live with it for your regular lifespan. So you can know what you need to do, but how do you keep up, like you said, the motivation to want to do it? And Matthew Moore, my dear friend who wrote that play, what I didn't say. Yeah, did you get a look at that? I think
I
I sent it,
did. Yeah.
right. You remember he has that great monologue in there where he says, you try to do this stuff. I mean, great, you've given me this list of things. Just because I know what to do doesn't mean I have the wherewithal to do it. We need people. And like we say, this is where sometimes I think lifting it off of the medical community and into the support groups and things like that to say, you might be a lot happier about taking a walk or playing a game of pickleball with a friend, and that will satisfy some of the things you need. It's not a replacement for your neurologist, but it'll give you things your neurologist wasn't supposed to give you anyway that you didn't know you needed. That's when we talk about support. It doesn't have to be sit and talk and complain necessarily, and not that all support groups are that.
Right.
Support comes in all sorts of ways, shapes, and forms.
Yeah. And I think there are a couple things that struck me as you were talking is one of the things that we know is self-efficacy,
Mm-hmm.
the role that that plays in engagement in treatment recommendations, right? So if self-efficacy is this idea of do I think I can do it, right? Henry Ford said years ago, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so I think that's one of the areas, and Greg's talked about self-efficacy and the role that that plays in, you give someone a recommendation to do some kind of exercise and they're 75 years old and they've never exercised before and they think, I can't do that
That's right.
because maybe they've been to a support group and someone's talked about rock steady boxing and they're like, I can't do that.
Right.
Right.
That's not
Or
me.
Right. Or cycling. I can't
Yeah.
do that. And so if you think you can't, you won't.
That's right.
And so it's how do we and that's one of the values of a support group is having someone else who it's called scaffolding, having
Yes.
someone else who's ahead of you who
That's right.
can call you up to that next level. And if I can see someone who has a disease like Parkinson's, like I do, and they're engaging in something, I begin
Right.
to go, wow, maybe I can do that too.
It's such a human thing. When you said that, it flashed to a moment for me. It's not just Parkinson's, it's human. When I was really going after my improv world, I was part of Second City for a while, and that was, the big esteemed, and they were in Vegas. They had the big show on the strip. And here I was, I had leveled up to where I was, the top level beneath the performance, the stage level. And I was being invited to, in an off-strip performance, play with the top players. So what
Got it.
happens in an improv show is you all, you walk out, whatever your ensemble is. I think there were 6 of us or so, and you introduce yourself and you say, we need a suggestion of X, and you get it, and you're off and running, and the show goes. Everybody's in a back line except for people who you just walk out on the stage and you make it up, right? That's the game. That's improv. So my thing is, I'm with these 5 other players that I've been watching, admiring, thinking the world of, and I'm saying, yeah, that's me. Of course it's me. But now I'm on stage. I'm like, this isn't me. And I'm like trying to do the Homer Simpson through the hedges thing. Like, how do I get off the stage against the wall? And what happened is, after a couple scenes had gone by and they'd done great, guy walks off the back wall, kind of taps me on the shoulder and says, come on. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm on. And we went and had a scene, and it was great. But I needed that exact moment, that scaffolding moment, to get past that's not me. And, we talk about what Ryan Cotton has said in Rocksteady Boxing all the time. People walk into the gym and go, I can't do this. I've never thrown a punch in my life. This isn't me. And it isn't until someone says, come on, and they start throwing a punch with them, and they hold their waist, and, and they give them a hug and a high five. And all of a sudden it's like, this is me. It's a dramatic, wonderful, transformational thing. It's the entire world, of course, that Yes and Exercise exists for, is to help people see who they are. And I mean, my modalities are writing and improv mostly. It happens every day in class. It's funny, this group I have right now, we're doing the movie Stand By Me, love it. Great classic, movie. Right? And it's these 4 boys who, they've got their challenges through abuse and everything they're going through to try to become, something more within the scope of, we could be heroes by finding this dead body. And my students are looking at that through their own journey, and they're saying, wait a minute, I have to write something based on not exactly who I am, but what my mind that I may be doubting is going to give me. And you see them struggle each week with it anew. And I keep working with them to say, that struggle is the greatest thing, as long as we're there to, as you said, scaffold for each other, to stand by each other. The same way the boys stand by each other through their challenges throughout that movie, we need to stand by each other through the various development of your story, of what you're believing is or isn't possible, because it's overwhelming, the idea of someone being perceived as anything you're not. In this case, I'm a writer. I'm going to have a book with my name on it. People are going to say you did. I mean, that's terrifying. And yet we're going to bring them there.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it, it's very hard to grasp, is that the growth comes through the struggle.
Yes.
Right. We all want to get to this place where we are healthier, happier, more free, more engaging. But to get to that, there's got to be struggle, right? You go to the gym and you work out because you want to get in shape. You've got to go through the struggle of the workout to get to look like whatever it is you choose that you want to look like, right? And it's pruning a plant in your garden, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to take something off. You've got to injure it, and then it grows back more. And that's the idea of post-traumatic growth in the psychology world, is that after, oftentimes for many, you go through struggle and you come out on the other side better than you were before. And it doesn't make sense when we think about that. But our bodies, with resilience and things of that nature, we find things within ourselves that we never knew we had.
But like you said, working out, we're tearing the muscles ever so slightly, right, to get the growth. With exposure therapy, we're giving ourselves, with vaccines, we're giving ourselves a small amount in order for our bodies to respond. And in storytelling, that exact thing you said, I had the slide that says wound to heal. And it can be read as, that's these characters' wound to heal. But no, as an author, it is your job to wound your characters, put them in dangerous, difficult situations in order to see them resolve. And that's why you write not your story. None of us are going to actively wound ourselves, hopefully, right? That's right. But a character in a story that you can relate to or you care about you can put him or her in terrible peril. And by the way, the bigger the obstacle, the larger the wound, or the bigger the scar, the more we go, wow, I'm interested. I'm fascinated. How are they going to deal with it? And they will reveal that to you if you give them the space. That's when your job as the author is to be kind of a midwife, right? Not
Yeah.
to say, I know. You don't know. And you have to get comfortable with not knowing. Oh my God. And then let the human interaction and the human reality over what 10,000 years of us living on this planet, show us the path. It'll
Yeah.
come.
And that's what's fascinating about the work that you're doing with using movies to help
Mm,
people see that, right? Because what are the movies that so many of us are drawn to? It's the underdog story, right?
that's it.
And you've talked about using Rocky, and
Yeah.
people love that because you've got this guy that's got to go through this journey and beat down and struggles and life challenges, and he comes out on the other side as a champion.
Yeah.
And we cheer for those things, right? And
Yeah.
there's so many movies out there like that, and our lives can be like that. And that's the scaffolding
Yeah.
sometimes, whether it's a movie or a friend, or I'm at a support group listening to someone's story of their overcoming their struggle, and I go, you know what? If they can do it, so can I.
That's right.
Or I begin to question, why am I not trying what they did?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the thing in me that's stopping me from engaging and doing that? And
That's right.
identifying that thing, working on it, then I can engage.
Yeah. And the other side of that too is when you see somebody doing it. This was, I think it was Ivan Reitman back in the day saying, I knew I wasn't the funniest guy in the room, but if I wanted to be seen as funny, I went and stood next to the funny guy. So when somebody's doing something, just go say, how can I support your gig? How can I show you, shine some light on you? And guess what? By doing it, you're getting reflected back.
Yeah.
Just get involved with the person you think's already doing it. It doesn't even have to be about you. Make it about them. It'll come back,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So
For sure.
that's
And that even lends itself into the idea of altruism and helping others, right? Because being that support person for someone else does something for us.
absolutely.
And we tend to forget that. It's like going to a support group and you don't say anything and you go, I didn't really help anybody. Well, you held space for somebody else who needed to share something they wanted to share. And if people aren't there, they don't get to go to a group and share.
Yep.
So you're absolutely doing something just by being a part of that. And so you're helping bring hope to someone else. You're helping with their meaning, which helps you.
And it's a word you brought up. We talked earlier offline about this meaning and mattering, right? Their story matters because you were there to hear it, to hold space for them.
That's right.
Give me the construct of matter again, because it's such a big thing. We're playing big into this and Stand By Me that these boys, I'm going back to that for a minute, they're at the question of 12 years old of whether or not they matter based on a variety of life circumstances. And I think Parkinson's can make us wonder if we matter anymore, if we've lost our identity, we've lost, the things us. Talk to me about the construct of matter and how it plays out in our lives.
Yeah, it's one of the three components of meaning in life, and the way in the meaning literature, it's specifically defined as significance, but it's the same thing as mattering. So, do, does my life matter? If I weren't here, would it matter to anyone? Right? And you can imagine someone who answers no to that question
Yeah.
is in a demoralized place, depressed place, probably both, I would argue. And you're in a place where life's just not worth living anymore. So meaning is gone. And nobody's going to care if I'm around or if I'm here. And that is a significant place to be when I don't feel like anybody cares about me. And trying to get to a place where I am, even in a support group, I'm engaged in a support group, and I've got some people there whom I know, and I'm connected with. I have conversation with. So my showing up to that group matters to those
Mm.
other people, and maybe that's as simply as I can start, getting to that place, and then over time beginning to build what your purpose is again. Part of it is defining my values. What are the things that I value in life? Figure out what those are, and then do things that support those values. And that's one of the simplest ways to build meaning. Having gratitude builds meaning. The altruism that I talked about, doing things for other people, helping someone else find meaning in their life gives you meaning in yours.
There it is. That's the
Um,
shining light thing we were just talking about,
it
right?
is. It is. And so yeah, mattering is a huge component of meaning. Purpose is one of the other ones. And coherence is really the third. So you've got purpose, coherence, and significance. And coherence is that thing of, is life going the way that I thought it was going to go? And that's one of the struggles with chronic illness. Purpose can be changed, can be redefined kind of at any point in your life.
Mhm.
And mattering our significance can be redefined based on relationships I have, things I engage in. But that coherence is a really tough one for someone diagnosed with an incurable chronic illness.
Yeah.
Because you're going to say, again, this is my assumptive world. All of these things that I thought my life was going to look like, and now it doesn't look like any of that.
Yeah.
And so that's a really difficult one to reconcile. But the other two are, we can adjust a little bit more. And really it's changing a perspective, right? It's really goes back to this whole cognitive behavioral therapy of reframing the way that I look at a situation. Because whichever, if I've got my life of Parkinson's and it's going to be terrible and there's nothing good about it, is on one hand, and the other hand is, yeah, there are things that are a struggle, but I've met a bunch of really cool people, and I'm learning to do things I never thought I could do before. Whichever hand I focus on is going to determine my mood,
Right.
right? So I'll always find what I'm looking for. And so
You
if
know,
I'm looking for all the negatives in Parkinson's disease, it's
yeah.
real easy to find them.
I like the way you physicalize that to say, look it, I've got two hands and they hold two truths and they're always there.
Yep.
They're always there. And so that now we're getting back to behavior. Which one am I choosing? And maybe if we have, good reflection, friend, therapist, whomever else to say, seems like you're spending a lot of time over here. Or did you know there's this hand's still there, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And one of
yeah.
the easiest things, Robert, and I use this with my students, and my wife's heard me say this many times, is you think about a spouse or a
Mm,
significant other, right? We've all of our spouses have those few things that irritate us that they do, right? And so I don't have those,
no,
but
no.
some spouses do.
Yes.
And so you've got this list of those, let's just say
True.
five things that they do that irritate you. But on my other hand, I've got this list of 150 things they do that I absolutely adore about them, right? When I wake up in the morning, whichever list I begin thinking about is going to determine my relationship with that individual that day.
Yep.
Because as soon as I start looking for the negatives, I'm going to find every single negative that you've done. You left this out, the dishwasher didn't get ran, the house is a mess, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Parkinson's. So we always have two options that we can look at, and whatever we focus on is what we find.
By the way, stop talking to my wife because you just listed things.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife, she's in the other room now. She's probably hearing what I said.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough for the time on this, and again to let people know too. Very excited that Brad and I are working on a research project together. We have it out there that is working with Rocksteady Boxing to try to unpack more of these exact things, right?
Yeah.
To try to we want to get past survival. We want to get into meaning, into purpose, into reframing that coherence, of saying, yeah, I mean, this may not be what I thought. However, this is perhaps even better because I
Yeah.
never imagined, right?
Yeah.
And all of that happens with this practical process of rewriting, and not say it's the only way, but it's a modality to do that.
Yeah. I think about how many people that I've met or you just see in social media in Parkinson's world who have found art
Right.
through their Parkinson's disease, and that's their purpose. They're like, I never knew that I either had the skill to do this or had the interest in doing this, but they've learned that, and you go, that was something wonderful. that came out of something that's not so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, this is the brilliance and the difficulty. Both things are true. The Parkinson's is always the realities of it are always going to suck. Are we going to allow ourselves to see this other thing that became apparent in part perhaps because of our shift of focus, right? Or the
Yep.
demand of the reality of what Parkinson's is. We don't get to bend that. We get a
Right.
yes that. We get a and this. That's where the power lies.
And this is what I got to do. Change my glasses. It
Oh,
allows me to see things differently. And sometimes I've got to put my readers on. Other
yeah.
times I've got to put my distance glasses on, right? And so that's what we've got to do is
Do you
learn
ever have you ever tried to wear bifocals?
yeah, I have.
That's
And
hard.
it is hard. And I'm cheap. I just get the Walmart glasses that are $6.99. And when they break, I've got pairs all over the house, probably
That's
like
it.
everybody else who's got readers. And
God,
I just grab a pair.
I had a friend talking about that physiological thing of trying to have split lenses. I know it's a doable thing. I can see it being something, but also my friend was talking about that, and her ophthalmologist said you have to go through a process of you're going to get nauseous for a while, flipping between these two lenses, seeing the world differently in the same glass. It's a skill. You can develop it. I'm not there. I'm with you. I got my single lenses, and yeah, because that's just that's what I can handle for right now.
And it's the process of accommodation,
Yeah.
right? Our eyes have to accommodate just like we have to accommodate to this disease of Parkinson's disease.
Hmm.
And it's just a process and it's not easy. Um, it's a challenge. It takes work, but the work is worth it in the end.
So important. You said it's not easy, and I think that needs to go out there more often so that people feel okay with asking for help, demanding help,
Yeah.
right? Because too many people, I think, especially it's not just, but proud males as we are, think
Yep.
I got this. That's not who I am to ask for help, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a burden, and it isn't about that. It's about, hey, the reality is you got this, therefore you deserve this, you know, and you know that help is yours because we're fellow humans sharing space, and it wasn't your fault you got Parkinson's. So
Yeah.
guess what? You get this.
Yeah. You know, it fits right into talking about the altruism and how you get more when you help. You know, I heard a guy tell me that I went to lunch with a friend and he's like, I'm buying lunch today and I didn't want to let him buy. I'm like, no, I'll do it. And he goes, don't take that blessing away from me.
There it is.
Right. So getting to help someone, you're giving them a blessing by letting them help you.
It made you uncomfortable because you're thinking, no, I could pay for this, but he
Yep.
was actually giving you a blessing, and
And
you
he
gave
was
it in
getting
return.
blessed.
I was going to say you gave it in return by allowing him to give.
That's right. So,
That's big, man.
yeah.
Dude, thanks for the time. This is
Hey,
awesome.
man.
I'll share
Love it.
this link with you, with everybody. Be looking out for the great stuff that Brad and I'll be doing. I know I'm going to see you in Phoenix in a couple months, and I'm looking forward to that.
Can't wait to get out to WPC. It's going to be a blast.
We're going to have a good time. Brother, you be
Yeah, man.
well.
Thank you, Robert.
See you on the next dose.